Todd, you farm out here by Juniata, Nebraska, and I know you've been raising some popcorn.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, tell me about you had raised popcorn way back when and hadn't for several years, and then you got restarted a couple years ago?
Just last year.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and you're growing for
Preferred popcorn out of Chapman, Nebraska.
Okay, they're a big one.
Yeah.
Tell me about. I know last year you had some great popcorn that went through some really bad weather.
Mm-hmm.
Tell
Sure
me
did.
about that.
Last year we had some popcorn. We had pretty much every year we've had that wind event around July 9th, July 10th, which is a critical stage for our corn. It's tasseling. Popcorn's the same way. We plant it the same way as we do our field corn, use the same system. And so we had like a 35% wind loss, but our popcorn still averaged about 6,000 pounds across the whole field.
Wow, great. So tell me about this last year.
This last year we planted a new variety from Preferred that was more of a hardier hybrid and a little bit longer season, and we did all the thing in row that we do with the ag advantage system that gives us availability and recovery in the first 70 days, and we make sure all the nutrients are available when the soil warms up. So we did the in-row system, and then we did the late season foliar test on this farm, 2 gallon of Feast XL with some manganese, some boron, Intensify, and Centos mixed in, and it was just an application of that food grade product on that field and plant food, and it really enhanced the yield on that field.
I always think with popcorn, because it's a smaller seed, that the most important thing you do right off the bat is amplify.
Absolutely.
Explain what Amplify does for that popcorn.
Well, Amplify, just like our regular corn, is we don't even question it anymore. We don't even test it anymore. We use it on our sweet corn. We use it on our popcorn. We use it on every kind of even milo, even our wheat that we do for cover crops. So it's just one of them low-hanging fruit situations where we just go to the field with. But Amplify is the difference maker of having everything come up even and having even emergence and having everything come out of the ground at the same time, warming up the soil. And that's what our in-row plant food does. It warms up the soil, gets that plant up and out of the ground. So Amplify just energizes that new seedling to go down and get nutrients right away. Even though it's a young seedling plant, that taproot's the most important. That first drink of water that young popcorn or corn plant takes has to be an energy source, and that's what Amplify does.
I always think of it really in a simplified way as a seed-applied starter, because it's high energy phosphorus. And the smaller the seed, the more dramatic the results. We get just amazing results on things like milo and popcorn. What's your plant population on popcorn?
Same as regular field corn. In our 15-inch rows, we're 36,000, and that's kind of where they want us to be with it. I did do some tests this year, went up to maybe 37, but 36 seems to be the secret spot because that puts us about 10 to 11 inches apart.
And are you using Amplify D or L?
Using Amplify D because we can't really roll that on the popcorn.
Okay, sure.
But what we found out is that with Amplify D and the synergistic effect of our in-row plant food like 816, the Centos, and Intensify is a huge one. It's a game changer.
Well, and you're talking less than $3 an acre for Amplify.
Correct.
Probably for 2.5, something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really ridiculously inexpensive for the kind of yield response we get. You were showing me this field map, and I know people can't see it on here, but tell me about this field. What was the average yield on the whole field?
The average yield was 7,500 on the irrigated part.
Okay.
We only had 3 inches of rain from June to August this year, so everything that was under a pivot averaged 7,500 pounds.
Wow. And I see a really dark green strip very distinctively right through the middle of the field. What is that? What's that represent?
Well, that little strip of the field was where we foliar fed. We did foliar feed the whole field, but we did a little spot there on that field where we applied a little bit extra there.
Okay, and that was
Feast
the
XL. Yeah, Feast
which
XL.
was a non-burning form of nitrogen later in the season, basically to help that kernel develop and fill completely. But it's just amazing here. It's so distinctive, and that was in that area of the field. What was the yield monitor showing?
I was showing around 8,800 pounds in that area of the field, and so I had to document it on my deal. As you can see on the percentage, it was, and my combine weighing system was 1.5% short.
Okay.
As I determined this,
Yeah.
so it was actually less pounds.
Wow.
So, but anyway, the late season foliar feed, late season plant health with any kind of a crop, especially corn, especially crops popcorn, is a bang for your buck, because you figure out what your ROI is on that and what you get for plant health. And we had that plant stay green and alive longer, which is pumping more sugar into that plant, higher test weight. I think we had average of like 65 or 66 pound test weight. Most everybody was 63. So
if somebody is growing popcorn, what would be your first, second, third priorities for them to implement in order to increase their plant health, and that as an expression of that increased yields?
I think the number one thing you have to do is you have to figure out what is your soil telling you. You have to do a very extensive, good AgriVantage soil test. Do it yourself. The second thing, amplify, and then make sure that you're using Intensify with a great, high quality plant food like our starters in furrow, and make sure you have all the nutrients available in the first 70 days for that young plant, because that's the most critical part of crop production, is the first 70 days, because you want to race that plant out of the ground, out of vegetative stage, productive stage quicker, the more days of sun in production. And I think that's why this field excelled, because we excelled it quicker, and it actually held on to its moisture, didn't dry down. Like Jerry says, it didn't die down, it dried down naturally. So.
And just as a closing, I know that on your entire farm, on every acre, you use products like Wex and all the AgriVantage system, and you use the soil testing, and you prescription apply everything. What was your average corn yield this year?
Our average corn yield on our irrigated was 293.
Okay.
So that's very good. We did have a couple fields, one that went to 316, and that was on the irrigated part. But overall of our average, we had very good high field averages on our corn. Our soybeans were kind of off this year because we didn't have quite enough rain in August to pull them through, even though we watered a lot. But I think most of it is related to what all the herbicides that are being sprayed, and I think it's affecting our yield. So, but I think with Conklin we'll get that figured out, how we can feed that plant and keep it green and growing through that stage, and do a nutrient application before we spray our herbicides. That makes a huge difference.
You bet. Todd, thanks.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.